Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to use watercolour to create this really easy cosmo flower painting. Before we get started, make sure to head over to the link in the description. It will take you over to my Patreon where you'll be able to find real-time nature tutorials using watercolour and coloured pencils. Every week about an hour of each tutorial is uploaded, just so it's not as overwhelming, and it means that it can be spaced out really nicely for you to complete and join in alongside me so we can keep up together. Also, you can then reach out to me after you've become a member at any time with any questions, and I am there to support, guide, critique, whatever you want me to do. And yeah, it means that we can create some lovely artwork together, so make sure you check that out. So as you can see for this flower painting, it was really crucial that I got the colours right, which is why I took plenty of swatches beforehand to make sure that them purples were the correct shade that I wanted them to be, alongside the greens that we'll be using for the stems. I then went in with the lightest shade of purple and began mapping in the petals on an outline that I'd already created, which again you can access through my Patreon. It's there ready to go, but if not, it's really easy to create an outline of this flower. You can just Google cosmo flowers and that basic outline will come up for you. It was really important to me for none of the petals to overlap, as I didn't want the colours to bleed together, and I think for this particular flower the petals are really defined, so keeping them separate until each one is dried is definitely important for this particular piece. I also think it's really important at this stage to decide where you want the shadow and the lighter areas to be. I really wanted the light to be coming from top to bottom, so it means that the top of all the petals are that little bit lighter. So yeah, I do think it is important to establish that at this stage, as you can then start to just slowly darken up where is needed. So for instance, because the light is coming from the top, in my particular piece, the first flower I painted, I really wanted that centre on the bottom petals from the centre point to be just a little bit darker, so I just dotted a little bit more paint in there and then let it bleed out so that that centre of the bottom area was that little bit darker. I then continued to put in petals for the other flowers that I want to paint, still being conscious that I didn't want anything to overlap, which is why there's quite a few gaps at this stage. So if there's anywhere that does overlap where it's not quite dry yet, I'd just leave it for now. You can always come back to it, which is again what I've done here. So yeah, just leave it be. Don't rush it. Definitely found over the years that the more patient you are with watercolour, the better the results, which again is why I'm recommending you do just leave it. Don't stress. It's very easy to want to go in and just correct everything straight away, put in all the petals, but everything will just bleed together and you won't even be able to tell where the petal starts and finishes, where it overlaps. So this is the best way definitely to do it. This way ensure you don't accidentally let everything merge together. You might have noticed as well that I'm trying really hard to work the paint in the same direction. I think this becomes more evident the further into this tutorial that I went. So each petal from the centre point of the flower, try and bring the lines coming out from that and then meeting at the other end of the petal, so it goes from that centre and kind of comes out, which is a really good way to get the texture of the petals just right with them tiny little lines, and it doesn't look overwhelming and patchy or anything like that. It all has that really nice consistency that again just adds to the texture and really ties it all together nicely. So you can see now that that first layer is dried, by the time you've got round to the last flower, the first one that we began working on then should be dry, so it's really nice to go back to that. You've not had to take any break at all, letting it dry, so it works quite nicely for this particular painting. So as you can see at this stage, I can then go back in and put in the rest of the petals, as by the time I got to the last flower, The first one that we began working on had then dried, so there's not that much waiting time unless you've used a lot of water. In this case it's probably too much water, so I just let that dry and then you can go back in and put the rest of the petals in, not doing anything different either. If it does overlap, because it's dried, you can now put that overlap in. It will give that really nice effect because watercolour is translucent, so you'll be able to see that slight overlap. If you decide to do it that way, you can put that in, and yeah, it just looks really nice with this particular medium. You can then go back in at this stage with them darker purples. Like I mentioned earlier, you can start putting in them shadows. I particularly put more underneath so that it looks like the light is coming from the top downwards, but you can do this any way you see fit. I do think it's easier if you've never used watercolour before, or you're practicing lights and darks and getting them shadows right. I think it's just easier sometimes to have the light coming from the top, as there's not that much to think about. You could even draw a little arrow to show yourself where things need to go, but yeah, it's not that difficult once you know where to put it. And even though these lines are darker, not doing anything differently in terms of technique, we're still putting in them lines out from the centre of each flower, and again it creates that really nice consistent finish, but it now adds in the shadow, and because we're adding in tiny lines, it means that it doesn't look too patchy. You've just gone in with the dark in one area. It's all very consistent, but you've still got, again, that light and dark and that balance between the two shades. And just keep doing this until you're happy. Be careful not to overwork the paint. You don't want too much dark, especially, like I say, where that lighter area needs to be. So just be conscious of that. You don't want it to all become the same shade where it's just all really dark. I'd recommend stepping back actually and taking a look every so often, just reminding yourself this can stay light. It doesn't all need to be the same shade of purple. But once you're happy with this, I'd recommend again letting this dry, and then we can go in and add that centre. I decided to use a really bright yellow for this, as I thought it contrasted really nice with the purple, as obviously purple it's just that little bit colder, and then yellow you could not get a more brighter colour, and it's my favourite colour. I use it in every painting, I swear. It goes in absolutely everything that I can put it in. So yeah, feel free to experiment at this stage. If you want it to look a little bit more cohesive, you could go with more of a muted tone, or maybe again a colder tone like a green, a hint of blue. That's quite nice against the purple, but it's free for you what you do the centre, or any of the colours really, but this is what I decided to go for today. So I just dotted this down, which is a really good way to practice control of the paint as well. Try not to let it go into that purple as it's drying. Some areas, not all, but still it's a really good way to just practice where you're putting the paint. And then same again when you go in with the green for the stems. Really good way to practice control, as you want the line to be as thin as possible. Please don't put too much pressure on yourself though. This does just come with practice, unfortunately, but you can still, even if it's a lot thicker than you intended, you can still come out with a really beautiful piece, so don't fret too much. And then I went in and put the leaves in, used a mixture of more of an earthy green and more of a vibrant green. There's not that much difference between the two, but it's nice to blend them together. You can see how then watercolour does blend if you've never used it before. It's a really good way to see how it does merge. So that is essentially it for this painting. It's super simple, like I said at the beginning. I really hope you've enjoyed watching and painting along with me. Of course, I then needed to go in with some paint splatters to finish. So don't feel like you've got to do this. It's definitely personal preference. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I shall see you next time. Bye!